Hello, everyone. Hello, my little blueberries. Thank you all for joining our first ever, but certainly not last, episode of Transformation Realness Live. I did talk a pretty big game for this show because I really am very excited. I know that those of us who are in the HR tech and transformation space, there's a lot of content out there. We've got podcasts, right? Like Transformation Realness, perhaps you've heard of it. We have webinars, we have panels, we have conferences, but what we don't really have is a TV show. And I thought that that was such a shame because we have so many smart folks that are in our industry who are really trying to do, I think, interesting things and innovate to solve complex problems. And I wanted to create a stage where those folks could actually have a place to come and share them. And that is Transformation Realness Live. There it is. All right. Well, so what the hell is Transformation Realness Live? It is a show that is dedicated specifically to the solution providers who are in our space. And there's a lot of them, right? There are a lot of big ideas, but there are also a lot of complex problems. And I thought that for our first ever episode, I would bring on some up-and-comers who are trying to make their own mark in the space, who have experience in solving for work problems in a lot of different ways, and can come and spill the tea on the state of HR tech. And yeah, here's what you can expect. I've got a few rules. The first is you must listen to Mother. It's my show. I'm going to keep us moving, right? But then it's also, this is supposed to be a positive space. We want to keep it real, but we're not here to name and shame. We're not here to tear each other down. We want to bring ideas that build and bring value, right? And then the last one is let's have some fun. Okay. So I am going to move us over to introducing a little bit about the company I work for, Aptitude. Aptitude Research, if you don't know about us, you really should. We are, in my opinion, the leading human capital management research firm. We do market research, studying innovation cycles in this crazy world of HR technology. And we get to do some really great advisory, both with solution providers like those who are joining us today, and practitioners, folks like you who are buying this stuff and implementing this stuff. What a novel concept, right? Well, why the hell am I here and trying to exert some sort of influence on the market? My name is Kyle, and I'm the head of strategy and principal analyst here at Aptitude. I get to work with the lovely Madeline Lorano, who you see here. And yeah, my background, I actually have like a real fire in me to bring some of this more real conversation to the space. My background, although I do get to work on research projects and advise clients today, before I joined here, I actually drove a transformation project myself at General Motors. As their head of talent attraction, sourcing, and insights. It was a really huge project. It was really complicated, and I learned a lot. Before I joined GM, I was actually on the solution provider side, trying to bring new technology to market and work with our clients to do cool things. That was at Beamery, a startup based in London. And before that, I really have been in research for a really long time. I was leading a research program at IDC. So I'm coming at this space from several different corners of the market. You know, it is one thing to sit in your ivory tower and look at the problems that are in front of us and wax philosophical. But I really like to get hands-on, deep and close to the problem. And yeah, so that's my background. I do want to give a very special shout out to our production partners for both Transformation Realness Live and for Transformation Realness Podcast, which is, of course, RepCap. They have been there you go, Michael. Yeah, they have been so incredible. I have these really wacky ideas and like I don't know, strange inspirations that I want to do something different. And they have channeled a bit of my creativity, we'll call it, to make something real, to make something cool, I hope. So thank you so much to Devin, who is my project manager, to Michael, who is my producer, Grace, who is playing support today and in the future episodes of TRL. And then, of course, to Mary Ellen Slater, who is the founder and has been a great yes person for me when it comes to the stuff. Okay, enough about me. You guys aren't here for me. You're here for the show and for these incredible panelists. What the hell is transformation realness? All right, so we're going to do a few different things today. We're going to start by presenting a little bit of the research that I think is showing us a reflection of where the market is today. Today, we are talking all about the state of HR technology as a market, as an industry, as an experiment. And so I want to share with you some of the work that we actually do at Aptitude that helps us get a perspective on the market. And I'll set the table for us a little bit. And then we're also going to have a meet and greet with all of our lovely panelists for us to get a quick little get to know you about who they are and why they're in the space. And then we'll actually sit down with all three panelists to dig into some really meaty discussion on what the hell is going on in HR tech. And then we have a little surprise, which is a surprise guest who's coming onto the show to pose an especially spicy question for our guests to get their hot takes on a very specific part of the work that they're doing. And then we'll wrap up. The one thing about the hot take, though, that is, I think, going to be really fun is it's a competition, y'all. We're not going to just like say, oh, that was a really nice response. You, as an audience, get to shape the content for Transformation Realness. You get to vote on who you think had the best or most brilliant response, and get to vote on who gets their own full episode of Transformation Realness on my podcast. Yeah, I know. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to welcome three friends, three influencers, and three badass pitches in our industry. So first, we have Natalie joining us from Translator. Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Kyle. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. I'm just the entertainment factor is huge. Thank you.
I mean, we're just getting started. Thanks, Natalie. We also have Jeet joining us from Kinfolk. Round of applause for Jeet. Hey, Jeet. Oops, that's the least. But we have a... Hey, Jeet, how's it going?
Hey, Carl. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. And yeah, Natalie said, especially for the sound effects, looking forward to those throughout the show.
Michael's on top of it. I mean, he's playing like soundboard and switching cameras out. He's a genius. And we had a little sneak peek, but we also have Elise joining us from Mothership. Hey, Elise. You look beautiful, but your mic is muted. And I think we need to get a drinking game for whenever we have to say that your mic is muted.
Oh my God. Sorry, guys. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Kyle. Good to see everybody.
I'm so glad you're here. Do you have a hat, perchance, that you wanted to flash on screen?
I actually have that today. I actually
do.
Yes. So, I was going to use it, take it, put it on, take it off, just for effect.
I'm into it. I like the hat more than a hoodie. Yeah. All right, Michael, let's get these folks out of here because we have some research that we are going to show everybody today. We'll catch up more with the panelists in a bit. But first, I honestly want to share my day job. It's not just sitting here and scream talking at folks on the internet. I promised. Instead, I want to talk about the state of innovation in HR technology. Now, it's no secret that the years before COVID and the years immediately following COVID were crazy in our space. I talked a couple of years ago when we were starting to come back to the conference space about burnout in our industry. The craziness of COVID was really, really intense. I think we all felt it, right? But what we failed to realize is that burnout was actually at a record high going into 2020. And I don't think that we ever really managed to deal with it. But now, of course, we worked our tails off trying to solve big problems, solve new problems, solve existing problems. We bought a whole bunch of technology, and where did we land, right? And so as a researcher, my job is actually to not just see where did we land, but where are we going? And I think I've got some interesting data to kind of reflect on that. The first is this chart, which shows us the anticipated spend in HR technology in 2 different years we ran this survey at Aptitude. The first was at the end of 2022, and that's in the blue. And then the second was in 2020. The second was in 2023. And what we see here is the anticipated spend, which, of course, we are always big dreamers in HR transformation, right? We're expecting that everything's going to go great. But what we found is that the actual investment wasn't quite as high as we had hoped. And I think a lot of us felt that, whether you're on the solution provider side, whether you're in consulting, or whether you're in-seat practitioners, we all know that things slowed down pretty abruptly in 2023, right? And so even as we were anticipating that continued momentum of transformation, what we found was a little off. Now, I don't want to be doomsday Debbie Downer, because if you look at the numbers for folks that like the levels of expected spend and the levels of actual spend, we're still actually pretty on par. Like, we're still looking pretty strong. Although we maybe like stopped and slowed down a little bit, we did still continue to move forward. And I think that that's a good reminder for us that whereas I feel like we have all kind of got slapped around, we kind of like ran into a brick wall last year, progress is still happening. And I think that that's also reflective as we ask folks year over year, what are they anticipating for next year? So 2023 was like that abrupt stop. But then when we look at seeing how are we planning to spend for next year, for 2024, we're feeling good again. It's like, yeah, did we take a pause? Did we slow down? Did we even have those abrupt stops? That did happen in a lot of different pockets of the market. But overall, we are still feeling pretty good. Like, actually, slightly higher positive outlook on planned investments for 2024 than we had previously. So like, we ran the survey in 2022 and we ran the survey at the end of 2023, and folks are still feeling okay. Like, the whiplash, maybe we are healing from it. But let me share with you why. The why is because we're actually delivering in some really, really important ways. The business is all in on AI for HR. As we look at the companies that were using AI last year against the companies that weren't, the companies that were using AI outperformed all others in every single one of these core KPIs. We're not talking about fluff stuff. We're not talking about just like feeling good about like employee experience in general. We are seeing companies moving the needle in really important areas with the investments they are making in HR technology. And as somebody, again, who has implemented it themselves, somebody who has tried to build it themselves, and somebody who has been studying this market for a long time, I am very inspired and encouraged by this information. Like, I think that this is something that is a really important signal to the market that, like, yeah, things slowed down, but maybe we're back at normal, right? I mean, what happened during 21 and 22 was ballistic. Like, it was truly unprecedented. And we were never going to stay at that same clip, right? And that's okay, because now we can step back, see what worked, see what didn't, and decide how we're going to learn and where we're going to go from here. And that right there is why I wanted to have this conversation today, and why I wanted these specific panelists to come and join me and share their perspective on the market. Because each of these, I have a personal, I don't say friendship with each one of you. And I have had the opportunity to advise them, to be advised by them, to learn about what they're trying to do in the market. And it has inspired me to show me that the market is alive and well. There is a lot of innovation in the space. And there's also still on the practitioner side, still a lot of interest in solving problems that are in front of us, right? So the next segment here is I'm going to get to know our panelists. We're going to get to know them a little bit one-on-one. And I have 3 simple questions for them. Who are you? What do you do? And why do you care? I don't think that any solution provider that's in that startup seat can actually try to solve these problems if they don't personally vehemently care to solve it. So I want you to get to know the people that I've gotten to know a bit, and lean in just for a little bit. And Michael, I think we can start with Natalie. We're going to move her on, and we're going to get to know a little bit more about her and her work at Translator. So Natalie, just remember, as we bring you on, we'll unmute our mic. There we go. Yay. Hey, girlfriend.
Hey, Kyle.
How are we feeling today?
Doing great. It's so good to be here. So do you want me to answer those questions, or do you want to like?
Yeah. Who the hell are you?
Well, you took them off the screen, so now I don't know what to say. So hi, everyone. My name's Natalie Egan. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name's Natalie Egan. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Translator. And we build technology that is focused on helping teams make better decisions through workplace scenarios. So it's sort of like technology is designed to bring people together to workshop real workplace scenarios in groups and like troubleshoot them and problem solve them and answer questions and talk about it in a container, like a kit. So it's a SaaS product. It's fun. It's cool. I've been building this for quite some time. Why do I care? Right. So this goes back to, this really is like about who I am in a lot of ways. It's been a big part of my journey since I came out in 2016. What I oftentimes talk about is my journey to becoming Natalie is also my journey to empathy. And what we really tried to focus on building originally was technology designed to scale empathy. And I think we did a really good job at that, but the winds of change in the markets, we evolved with that in a lot of ways. I think what we found was that empathy is at the core of all learning and development. And so a lot of what we had built was applicable much more broadly than just what we originally focused on, which was really diversity, equity, inclusion. So we've been evolving, and I'm excited to be here today and share my story and just be a part of this conversation. So thank you so much.
I'm so happy to have you, Natalie. And I think that one thing that I learned from you, if I had to choose one thing, and you've heard me say it before because it was just so money, was we were sitting down and you were talking to me about the problem, the problem with learning. There's been a lot of innovation in learning for a long time, a lot of new stuff, but you got to the heart of this issue that just slapped me in the face. You said learning as we've designed it now. We should have had a slap sound effect. We'll get that for next time. Yeah. But truly, although we have done a lot of innovation and brought a lot of tech to learning, where we've ultimately landed is learning today is really lonely. Yeah. And that I was like, oh. And yeah. I love the way that you are solving for that. And you know what? Empathy is, I think, a cornerstone of authentic and sustainable DEIB strategies. We have to care, right, about each other. And the only way I think we can is if we learn together. I just absolutely love it. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Natalie, thanks. Michael, let's move Jeet on from Kinfolk. Hey, Jeet. And don't forget to unmute.
Hey, Carl.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
So, Jeet, you know the drill. Who the hell are you? What do you do here? And why do you care?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. So I'm co-founder and CEO of Kinfolk, and we're a SaaS company, and we help people teams level up their new hires and managers faster. And in a nutshell, we do this by plugging into their tech stack, and we streamline all the different parts, which is the tasks, the content, the communications, and the connections and the relationships into what we call these templated playbooks. And then we automatically deliver these playbooks to individuals and managers in their flow of work when it matters most through Slack and calendars and microsites. So, for example, we can guide folks through interviews to improve quality of hire, or during pre-onboarding or to reduce time to productivity, or when you got a new manager, to guide them across the entire life cycle, almost like having their own HRBP in their pocket. For example, how to run reviews properly and what to do there. And the reason why we're doing this and why we care so much is because I think it's something like we spend 90,000 hours of our life at work. And really, when we get to the heart of it, both managers and the people team are key to making the most out of those 90,000 hours, right? But they're so squeezed, more squeezed than ever before. There's just so much admin that's getting in the way of allowing people to be effective, and people don't have the right enablement when they need it most. And HR systems don't automate or enable folks as much as they promise. And a lot of the HR tools that have been built for HR teams, not their customers, which is the employees.
100%.
So it doesn't really help HR teams accomplish their goals because it's almost too inward looking. So forcing those, traditional models of collaboration and learning aren't going to create effective managers and productive workforces in today's world of work. So we're pretty passionate about solving this and flipping the script and almost creating a B2B2C product, but for HR teams.
I'm into it. I think it's so interesting you use the word enablement, Jeet. I think that that is such an important part, especially I think your early use case your initial use case was onboarding.
Mm.
And I don't think I told you this, but my first published white paper as an analyst and researcher was actually on onboarding. So we're talking about like 12 years ago. And I'm like not the oldest analyst in the industry. Like we had been trying to solve that experience of onboarding, cross-boarding, offboarding, whatever it is, for a long, long time. And the problems persist. I think you just crystallized such an important part of that. We're designing these solutions for the HR team or for IT. You know, we're trying to solve important parts of maybe those workflows of the onboarding operation, but we're leaving out like the human element. And so I also just am a big fan of your branding of Kinfolk. I think it just really inspires folks to think about this a bit differently.
Cheers,
And
Cal.
have a Beamery alum on the show. Yeah.
Exactly.
Total disclaimer, Jeet is not paying me to be on the show today, but we did both have an opportunity to work together as partners, as thought partners, and as friends when we were at Beamery. Great to have you, Jeet.
Good to be here. Thanks, Cal.
Get into it. Okay, Elise, are we ready, girlfriend? I can't wait for you all to meet Elise. She is absolutely fabulous. If you couldn't tell from her super cool hat. Hey, Elise.
Oh, hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to share with the audience who we are, what we do here?
So my name's Elise, and I'm founder and CEO of Mothership. And Mothership is a total talent ecosphere. And it's a platform, of course, and ecosphere. And essentially what we do is we connect talent with teams seamlessly and at warp speed. So we all know that, hiring can be a very long, arduous, antiquated process. And at Mothership, we're driving the future of work. And that is a combination of open talent and all kinds of talent operating together under one roof. And as I said, accessible many different ways globally with the click of a button. So we have a platform. We also have a SaaS platform as well as a marketplace that we run. And we have a subscription job board and very thriving community here of talent that we serve well. Why do
and
we
that community you work on like hard yourself, right? I mean, I think that one thing that's really challenging with that that contingent workforce corner, the gig workforce, there's a lot of blending there. But I think that what I've seen in the market that's different from Mothership, people actually kind of like to what Jeet was talking about earlier, they design for just the process of procurement,
right,
and not actually designing solutions that help workers come and do good work, deliver on a statement of work with a manager. I love that you're bringing into this corner. I mean, this is a really hot corner of the market, that you are bringing in tools that actually help a contractor align with their manager and collaborate with their team and track the work that they're doing and what they're supposed to be doing. But you're also investing so much time and resources into the workers that you are bringing onto the Mothership. And that's just so cool. I think we have to care about these folks, don't we?
Right. Absolutely, Kyle. Thank you. Yes, they are the backbone of our economy. They are the backbone of everything that puts food on all of our tables all day, every day. And of course, we're a two-sided marketplace and a two-sided platform always. So we're serving always both sides, because if there's no one buying, then of course the talent can't do what they do. So we serve both sides equally, but absolutely the talent has been forgotten in the mix and not served as well as we would like them to be. So top priority for us always.
Love to hear it.
Yeah.
And so I hope that if we are noticing anything in the audience, is that who we've invited to join us today, they deeply care about this stuff. And that's just so inspiring to me. But I think that's like one of the new standards for making it in this space. Is there a lot of buying going on? There has been. You can actually become quite well-to-do in this industry, but you actually have to care more about the people and the end user than just like your shareholders and investors. So yeah, I love the heart. And let's get into it. So we've met all of our extra special guests, right? And this next section is us. Now that we know who they are and how they're coming at this space and how they're innovating, we're going to dig into some questions to kind of I don't know, give a read on what's going on in the broader HR tech space. So, Michael, if we can move everyone onto our stage. And yeah, look at that. I really need to get like videos to play. Maybe it's, have you guys seen that Elton John and what's his name music video where they're all puppets and they're like dancing around? Like, anyway, need to get some more puppets in here. All right, let's spill some tea, honeybee. All right, so audience, I have connected with each of our panelists together for us to talk a little bit about this concept and a little bit about what's going on in the market and kind of seeded a little bit of discussion. So we're going to be candid today, but there is some structured Q&A here. As you are listening along, if you want to ask your own question, if you want to jump in, we do have the chat that is open. And so please feel free to jump in, whether it's your own thoughts on the questions that we have posed, whether it is a question that you have specifically that you want to present to the panel. We will be keeping an eye on the chat. So yeah, join the discussion. All right. I'm going to pull up our questionnaire here. So the first question I have, and panelists, I am going to ask you to signal if you want to jump in so we don't jump on each other. I'm not going to go in any kind of order, right? But the first question that we have is a big one. Elephant in the room, HR bought a lot of stuff over the last 5 years, but especially so during the 2020-2022 period. From your perspective, what problems do you think that we actually solved with all of this? Or maybe problems that we've made important headway on with all of these investments? Who wants to go first? Don't be shy. Yeah, Elise, go for it.
All right. I don't think we've made as much headway with those acquisitions, et cetera, as I would love to see. I think what ends up happening is, things get bought and they get added to a bigger, system of other things that, are current in the market. And I don't know that there's necessarily more integration as much as there's just less competition in the market. So I would love to see these acquisitions being made and integrated seamlessly versus added to the portfolio and become part of, a little bit of the bottleneck that's going on in the industry. So I think there's been a lot of positive as far as coming together, but I think that we have some work to do with seamless integration of, current systems with new systems, because these are not things that were built that way from the ground up.
I love to hear it, and I have to respond. I think that I've observed the same, but I think that there are two aspects of integration, and I think that we're not getting it quite right in either way. One is the technical. You buy a new best-of-breed tool to solve a specific problem, but you don't integrate that system into these others, right?
Right.
But then there's also like the process and strategy integration. We buy something and put it over in the to solve just this.
Right.
But we live in an ecosystem of talent, right? And you can't solve for any, at least in my experience, any problem in complete isolation. Natalie, Jeet, what do you think?
Jeet, do you want to go or you want me to go?
Sure, yeah, I can go. Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's a while to go, but I think you're starting to get that kind of consolidation rather than necessarily best of breed at the top end of the market. So you've got, for example, the likes of Deal, who I got an email from them today. I think they bought like a payroll provider, and prior to that they bought another company called Zavi, and now they're giving the HRIS for free to folks to try it out, and they're selling in different ways. So I think we're going to start to see some really interesting plays in terms of what's going to happen in the market. The things that excite me though is, because of players like Deal, we're starting to solve problems that we weren't able to solve before, like cross-border hiring and paying people more fairly. Now, are we already paying people more fairly? Not yet, but it's starting to happen.
Yeah.
And even little companies like Hoffy, who are starting to deliver equipment to the right people, all these little operational pieces will need to come together, and that integration work hasn't happened yet. But we're starting to reduce the impact of the Kyle, you and I, we used to talk about this at Beamery, the postcode lottery, and we're starting to democratize some of that, and that's going to be huge. And you do have more companies talking about pay transparency. I think in a lot of ways, also it's accelerated in a good way and highlighted some of the problems that already exist. It's shown us that the office isn't an equal space, and we haven't solved for that. We've had the realization that we don't have a clear view of the employee lifecycle and where we should be investing. We're not good at change management. We don't develop our leaders and managers properly. We've realized that the traditional models of L&D isn't working, which is why having someone like Natalie on the panel is amazing. I think what you guys are doing are great. And we've also realized that we don't value our HR teams enough because they've been the first person, even though we've spent so much money, they've been the first folks to get cut over the last couple of years. So it's not been great, but I think it's brought to surface some good questions to be able to solve over the next 5 years.
Great. Natalie, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I love this question. It like makes me go deep and think about like all the things. So what strikes me initially is this thought that like, we're talking about what problems are we solving, with these solutions. What I like to think, there's this cycle that happens in technology, and it can happen in sort of micro cycles or bigger, longer cycles, but it's like the solution becomes the problem. Right.
Mm.
And I just think that's like such a fascinating cycle. And a lot of times there's innovation, that spurs new innovation cycles. And if you look at a longer form cycle, what we talked about with lonely learning, right? So like e-learning was this solution for like so many things. And I think we became hyper fixated and dependent on e-learning, especially as we went with remote teams and COVID hit. I mean, it just became wild, right? But we have a huge problem because of that, right? And if you look at like Zoom was a solution and now it's a problem. And I'm anticipating the same thing is going to happen with AI, right? AI looks like the solution right now, and pretty soon it's going to become the problem. And I don't know what that's going to look like 100%, but there's just so much like density of innovation happening right now. All these like little solution providers with all these little features that aren't really companies coming to market with solutions that ultimately, from a buying perspective, nobody wants to have like 15 AI solutions or what. I mean, I don't even know what's going to look like, but there's going to be some consolidation. There's going to be some solution to deal with the AI at some point. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. I agree with everything that Jeet and Elise said. And I'm just here for the ride. So thank you.
There's a lot there, I mean, I think that if you look at self-service, employee self-service, which was like drove a lot of investment, I think that did become a problem as well. I think the more that we try to buy bandwidth for HR practitioners, HR teams, the further they got away from some of the day-to-day. And employee experience, I think, became kind of a catch-all for just disintermediation of HR with their actual employees. We want to, look, we all want to get reduce our administrative workload, even as entrepreneurs ourselves, right? We don't want to get bogged down with everything, but it's part of that like solving in isolation. I think it comes back to Elise's concept of like we need to think more about integrating solutions, holistic solutions. One project might be an important building block, but one project doesn't solve everything out of the box, right?
You just made me think. So in a different world, and by the way, do you remember the metaverse? Like everybody was talking about metaverse.
Yes. Yeah.
In a different universe, like you talked about self-service for HR, but I just love thinking about comps, right? So like self-checkout at like grocery stores is now the problem. Like it was a solution, and now it's become a huge problem. And so now they're innovating, like, how do we fix that, right? So I just love that disruptive cycle. Like that's why I'm saying I sit back and just enjoy the ride. And from an entrepreneur's perspective, like when you see disruption, like that's the opportunity to like, it's a very capitalistic approach, but like there's always opportunities there. So there's a lot of disruption coming.
We're not done yet. Good news for the likes of y'all, right?
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to our next question here then, which is kind of the counterpoint here. What problems persist? We did invest heavily in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas over the last several years, but what problems persist? are there a lot of technology gaps? Is it just like we need to go and buy more tech, or are things a bit more complicated? And Elise, I might start with you.
Great, because I didn't want to, make myself go first, but I have to jump in on this one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kyle. So, what problems persist? So, to me, look, I think there's a lot of antiquated process in the staffing supply chain process that just blows me away every single day. So, the fact that there's really so many middlemen in the room, and yes, not to name and shame because we're definitely not here to do that, but there's just too many middlemen in the room. And what the problem with that is that there is what I like to call broken telephone. And the concept of broken telephone, even though it's obviously not exactly broken telephone, right? But it's really about data breaks to me. And it's about the fact that clean data, which is something that I take very seriously and we take very seriously here at Mothership, and that direct connection between the people that really matter, right? And really everyone matters when it comes to the old school supply chain process, and everyone's had such an incredible hand in everything. And as you said, Natalie, everything is up for disruption and what I call evolution, right? And so I think the evolution that needs to happen from where we sit is about this direct connection. Let the talent speak directly to the people that are actually hiring them. Let the people that are hiring speak directly to the talent that they want to hire. And of course, the importance of HR teams to translate some of that, to dissect some of that, to help to put budget towards that, to help to kind of organize all the stakeholders around that is very important. As long as it doesn't get in the way of that direct communication, because what happens then is a few things. First of all, the wrong people are hired because no one's really speaking directly to each other. And so, so-and-so passes on the message to so-and-so. And then by the time it actually gets to the hire, or it gets to the JD, or it gets to the worker, there's just like nobody really even understands what they're hiring for explicitly and in a very nuanced, direct way. And then, of course, outside of the hire, the data connection, the data breaks that, make productivity intelligence untrackable, that make the efficacy of your management untrackable, and obviously the impact of that not even seen. To me, those are the biggest issues, is really the direct connection, the data breaks, and the broken telephone, and so many middlemen in the room that are better served doing so many other things. They're not supposed to go away. They're just supposed to be repositioned to help the process along.
Yeah, it's interesting. The red tape exists for a reason,
Does
but then the red tape becomes,
right.
concrete walls that,
Right.
are impenetrable.
Right.
Yeah. And I hear you. It slows innovation. I think it also just, it undermines value for a lot of folks. Process is important, but one thing that makes me anxious, and at least you started to talk about from the job description down to the actual hired employee. Natalie, you had talked about AI becoming a problem when it's supposed to be the solution. Imagine when job descriptions are all generated by AI. And I don't know if you all have been.
Everything is generated by.
I know. I actually just saw like a whole ass video that was generated from AI. I'm like, what? Yeah. But if you are experimenting with any Gen AI, like, you're supposed to come back and edit what it gives you. I don't know if recruiters and hiring managers are going to be coming back and actually cutting things out of a job description. Be like, "Ooh, yeah, that sounds good." Even
You're
if
just
it's not
get like one AI who's the recruiter, and then a candidate who's going to build their own AI, and you're just going to get AIs talking to AIs, and there's not going to be any humans there.
And then we can all just go to universal incomes, and
all be in our pods, and it'll be great.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, Jeet, maybe I can come to you for a second about this one. What problems do you see that are persisting despite all of our investments over the last several years?
It's really interesting. Alice and Natalie both touched on this, is that we've kind of taken ourselves out of the loop, and whether it comes to direct connection between the candidate and the manager, we've created processes there where we've taken away that connection even further than it already was. And when it comes to self-service, we've taken away the human element again that Natalie was mentioning. to enable employees properly. So, and ironically, we would have thought that given the move towards remote and hybrid work, there would have been more of a need to have that human connection. But it seems to be something that hasn't been solved properly yet. And I think a lot of it actually isn't, to your other question around how much of this is tech versus not. I think very little is actually a tech gap, despite being a SaaS vendor. I think tech can help to spur on that change that's required, right, and enable folks amazingly well. But actually, I don't think it's just the tech. It's what people are looking for is guidance on how to move forward, and even what problems to focus on in order to understand what tools to bring in. I mean, we've had comments from our existing customers and partners who have said that what they value about us is not just the tech, but actually being able to partner with them, even if it means that they don't end up using our solution after that point, because we know they'll come back later on, right? So it's like that problem of just shoving in tech in order to solve a problem when it may not be a tech problem is something that has always persisted and still persists despite these investments.
Natalie, what's your perspective there? Because I mean, I think learning is a perfect space where there has been tech, there have been problems, and there's no magic wand here.
Yeah. So my interpretation of this question, like what problems still persist, will persist. I mean, I think just that we said it a little bit already, but I'll just reemphasize, like remote and hybrid teams, distributed teams, like and in-person teams combined with them, like, which is obviously hybrid, is going to be a major problem. And I think when you combine that with, again, this concept of lonely learning, e-learning, not to, I mean, e-learning has its role, right? Like it's like, we need e-learning, but it can't be the only way for people to learn. It's not a complete way for people to learn. So if you've got remote distributed teams, you're hiring all over the world, and they're not coming into the office anymore, you have two major things colliding, right? You have e-learning, which in itself has its own challenges and problems, and you have remote and distributed teams coming together and creating really big problems that are inhibiting growth potential for your employees. Like, that's huge. There's like a lot of waterfall of little problems coming off that. Two, it's affecting people's mental health, right? Big time, right? Like it's like our mental health with remote teams and e-learning being the primary way that I'm learning about how to be successful at this company is like not good. And then those two problems are then leading to a retention and engagement issue. So you really have a lot of cycles and interconnectivity. It's a systems problem, right? And you can't band-aid it. You can't just be like, oh, we'll fix this little part over here. So you really have to think holistically about the whole thing. And obviously we can't blow up the system and just start over. That would be perfect and amazing. But I do think we have to really change how
Lisa's like, are you sure?
Legacy and just leave it in the past and just move forward. Yeah. Great.
Just clear the table.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that would be amazing, right? But you can only do that in like simulated environments.
Yeah, right. No, it's not practical.
This is not a sim as much as I would, maybe, I don't know, maybe it is. And that's why I think we're doing what we're doing is we're trying to create an alternative to the addiction to e-learning, lonely learning, that for groups, to bring groups of people together so that teams can learn in a cohort, to learn in real time, to learn from each other, rather than some droning on system that you're not paying attention. You're just watching Netflix and you're guessing at the answers, right? But so not only are we learning together, but we're also building relationships with ourselves. We're building relationships with each other. And then ultimately we're building relationships with the brands, which helps us find meaning in our work. And that's going to drive retention and engagement. So a lot that I just said there, but that's kind of what I have to say.
No, I think you said it well. And one thing that I have to give credit back over to the transformational HR folks, the ones that are trying to drive these projects.
Right.
We have all seen it before, even as their partners in the solution provider space. What the problem that you started with, the project that got approved, the solution that you bought, the product that you bought, the solution you designed, the solution that gets implemented, y'all, it is a long ass and painful journey from that beginning to that end.
Right.
And I think that's where
Yeah.
we end up just like, let's just go live with this and we'll come back and iterate on this. And some of the companies, they do have that maturity in those programs that are running, that are coming back and iterating and like adopting that agile innovation. But I think that we are, as an industry, have to evolve a bit to account for what we're observing for decades now of behavior.
Right. Can I jump in there for a minute just to,
Yeah.
Kyle, because it's so true. Like our tech and our cloud solutions are so simple, right? And then a lot of people are getting away from on-prem now, finally, and going to cloud. But the truth is, a good implementation, and our implementation, is not that long and complicated. It's not long and complicated at all. It's literally just about utilizing it. It's there. We do a white label wrapper on our SaaS. Our external technology is just there to use. And it's just plug and play. And that is where good technology should start and end, in my opinion. It should just be plug and play. It shouldn't be this long-winded implementation. Why these are long-winded, I can understand from, perhaps the enterprise standpoint and how much complication. But I think that a lot of things are just getting overcomplicated, right?
Yeah.
And I don't understand really why that's happening, other than probably just getting a lot of stakeholders in the room and getting them to agree. And that's the bottlenecks that I'm talking about. At the end of the day.
And then making it through the governance that's there, the red tape that's there, navigating the existing stack that's there.
It could be very simple. It could really be a matter of just, and trying something new, right? Not going to those old legacy systems or those old legacy providers that are still bringing, they've got this complicated system that maybe they've upgraded it a little bit, but it's not this ground up, innovative, next gen solution from the get-go, and they're trying to make it that, and that's also a long, complicated process. So I would definitely say try something new, try out the new providers, like Mothership, like Kinfolk, like Translator, and like others that have these new innovative solutions that are integratable with your current systems as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are running low on time. So I would like to pose this last question, and for us to maybe think of like a quick response, if I may request. Listen to Mother, which is, all right, knowing what we know and experiencing what we've experienced, I think we got to a really great heart of the problem in front of us at the end here. What advice do you have for other innovators in our space? Because the question that we had to skip is that, like, the market is tough right now. Buyers aren't buying as much. Money's not free, right, for investment. And so it is really tough to make it through these times, especially and when you are up and coming. So what advice do you have as entrepreneurs in your own right, and as leaders in your own corners of the market with big ideas and big ambitions? What advice do you have for the others? And Jeet, I will start with you.
Sure. Don't create an HR tech product would be my advice. What I mean by that is what I mean by that is don't create a product as the traditional HR mold dictates. Create a product that makes the most of the largest line item on someone's budget, which is salaries. And how do I make the most out of the spend that I'm putting on that and the ROI on that? And I think if we look at it through that lens, rather than I'm creating a product for HR, then we can start to align ourselves more with the business outcomes, and therefore actually help HR get a seat at the table and be more effective, rather than creating a quote unquote HR tech product, is what I would say.
Like it. Natalie. Oh, oof. I need to give Michael more space for his sound effects because they are money. Natalie, what do you think?
Yeah, so my advice, I'm drawing upon my parents here. So, and I've got two bits of advice so one's from my mom. So my mom used to always say, like, showing up is half the battle. And so I would just say, you got to show up. Like that's a big part of it. You find ways to do that. You got to be resourceful. There's a lot of challenges in just showing up, including, we don't have time. So just showing up is half the battle, right? The other advice from my dad was and he's not an athlete, so he doesn't use a lot of sports analogies, but he might be equating this to, like, I don't know, something else. But he was always say, you got to stay on the field. And I think, being able to survive these like hype cycles and and evolve and persist, and in some ways resist, but to really focus and stay on the field is probably my biggest piece of advice. Like, that's the key to survival in a lot of these startup environments, is just staying on the field. So if you can figure out a way to stay on the field, oftentimes those are the ones that are going to be rewarded.
Love it. Boom.
Yeah.
Elise, what's your
Thank you,
take?
guys. So my take is, I mean, I love what everybody said. Both of you guys said great things. And I think that, well, for me, it's always about, create a great product, right? Like, if you could create a great product, a better product than what's out there, then, it's going to do well. I think that, it's always great if you can, provide something that's recession proof, so that in any market, a bull market or a bear market, you could do really well. So I think that, even from where we sit, we're total talent, but the contingent talent side could really do really well this year, right? So we're kind of hedged where, and I've always loved to hedge our bets, never to be too specialized, so that, if one appendage goes down, you don't have another one to rely on. So I would always say, try and hedge your bets, try to bring value in more than one area if you can deal with the multi-focus that takes. And there's the pros and cons to that as well. It's very important to be micro-focused, but I think it's also important to be hedged and to have, something else to lean on should the market change and should people's needs and wants change as well.
Yeah, I think that's the holy grail. Recession-proof your company, your product, yourself. I'm just going to go back to gardening and touch dirt if this doesn't work out. Okay, wait a second. I think that we might have someone else that wants to join the conversation. Michael? Oh my God, look at who it is.
Hi guys, how are you?
Katie.
Super fun conversation so far. I've been listening.
Wow, that was a lot of sound effects. Okay, I'm gonna ask our panelists to step off for a second. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. Can I plug you for a second and give you like a little bit of let everybody know who you are? I'm gonna just be a fangirl for a minute. So everyone, welcome to Katie Coletto. She is the head of product marketing for Workday's Office of the CHRO products. That's a whole lot of product to market, honey. And I think you're drawing quite a bit of experience that you're bringing to the table. Not just years of experience, right? But actually a diverse background of experience in tech. I think you said a quasi-utility, which I don't know what that is.
British
exactly.
Telecom, way back in the day.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm really, really excited to have you on. And I should probably unblur my camera so people can see this cute little ditty that we have for you.
A very old picture.
Well, I really like it. It's cute. It's on your LinkedIn, and I think it's really cute.
I think.
All right, so Katie, you have heard some hot takes from our panelists, but now we get to go to the really exciting part. What do you want to ask our panelists?
All right. Well, I did a little bit of sleuthing, and we've talked a lot about the HR tech market and tech and products, but I want to know a little bit about them. And they have some very interesting backgrounds. So working at Nickelodeon, LinkedIn, Beamery, some really interesting companies, and also skill sets. So we're all about skills at Workday. So I am wondering, here's a spicy question for you. Digging deep into your background, what is one skill or experience from your past that you're bringing to this venture that's going to be that special sauce or give you that edge and make you super successful?
Ooh, okay. We're getting personal up in here, Henny.
Exactly. Enough about talking about tech.
No, I really like it.
Let's talk about you.
My heart started I was like, oh my God, where are we going with this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Pleasure, Nat.
All right. Well, so we've been running everything else in alphabetical order. I'm going to do reverse alphabetical order and give Elise a chance to answer first. Elise.
Thanks, Kyle. Hi, Katie. Nice to see you. So wonderful to have you here, and best surprise. So thanks for joining. So, and thanks for taking the time to look into my background and all of our backgrounds. It's an honor. So, look, I think resilience for me is one of the biggest things. I'm originally from South Africa, and I was an immigrant when I moved to New York City from South Africa at 17 years old. So landing in New York at 17 and then cutting my teeth there between college and big corporates, small to mediums, hospitality, you name it. Then moving out to LA, cutting my teeth there. And then, of course, now living in Florida, where I'm based, has all given me quite a bit of resilience. And I think that that's key. And it's also made me a spectator of life, where I've been able to really, get in touch with people from all walks of life. And, and really get to know how they think and how they feel. And, we talked about empathy earlier, and have the experience of working alongside many different people from many different, nationalities, countries, etc. So I like to think of myself as a global citizen from that standpoint, and it's made me very resilient in most situations. So I draw on that a lot.
Love to hear it.
Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wish I was more resilient. I am a bleeding heart. Okay,
you
going
are
through.
resilient. Look at all the great things you've done.
Thank you, Katie. My mom likes me too. All right, G, you are next. And Katie, do you want to repeat the question?
Oh gosh, yeah. So so looking into backgrounds, everyone has had some really great backgrounds, but what's one skill that you're going to bring forward from your background that really gives you that secret sauce or that special kick for being successful in this venture?
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, great question, and excited to see you here as well. And yeah, appreciate you doing the background research on this. I think it's more of a capability that I'm thinking of here, and it's really about the fact that I had the privilege to work as a product manager across Beamery and other HR tech companies as well, which is how Kyle and I started working. And as a product manager, you have to think about the customer, your ideal customer profile, and what is their journey. And I think there's so many parallels between the customer journey and the employee journey, where you have the buyer, and on that side, you have the candidate on our side. Then you have the customer once they've subscribed to your product, if we're talking about a SaaS product. In the same way, I think employees are subscribing to our product within the business, which is the employee experience. And it's up to us to make sure that they continually on a monthly basis subscribe to us and don't leave. And I think there's so many exciting things that are happening now where people are starting to map out the employee life cycle and really look at those moments. We're at that point where people are willing to experience and take on the challenge of how do we treat our people experience as a product. So I think a lot of the learnings from being a product manager will allow us to translate some of that into treating our employees more like customers.
I love it.
Surely hope so.
Thanks, Katie.
All right, G, thank you. Michael, can we move Natalie on so she can give her a response here? Natalie, what do you think? What are you going to bring with you?
Okay, so first of all, Katie, I'm super glad that you asked this question and not some like technical, like I didn't know what was going to happen. So thank you for but this also creates like a whole different remote response. So I would say what's coming to mind for me is actually it's a skill that I didn't have. It's like, so what I'm leveraging is the lack of this in my previous life and in my previous ventures. So that skill for me, we talked about a little bit already, my journey to Natalie being my journey to empathy. So I had like zero empathy prior to my transition. I was like zero self-awareness, like living in a bubble, like didn't understand privilege, like didn't understand like how most of the world works. And really my management style was like more like command and control. Like I had another venture-backed startup that ultimately failed because of the culture and the sort of toxic work environment that I created. So I think leveraging that experience and, as I build this company and bring this to market has been sort of my secret sauce. In a lot of ways, people used to say I don't have time for emotion. Now it's like this is driven by emotion, and probably to a fault a little bit. But I like to build the team around me to balance it out. But to me, this is empathy is what's going to help us win. It's going to bring us to where we need to be. And that's what the solution does. So, it's all kind of one thing for me. But I didn't have that in my previous startup. And that to me was ultimately the biggest reason for our failure. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that question. And Kyle, thank you so much for putting this together. Like, I've done a lot of podcasts and things like this, and this is by far and away the most entertaining. So thank you very much. And thank you.
The fun's not done, honey.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's doing today. So.
And thank you all. Those were all just amazing, amazing answers. I mean, between resilience, empathy, and knowing the customer. So back to you, Kyle.
No, Katie, we're all going to stay here for a second. Now you're in the hot seat, Hanny, while we are waiting for everyone else to vote on the response that they think was the best. And it's subjective, right? So maybe there's a little popularity contest, but anyway, Katie, what skill have you brought from your experience to your work?
Gosh, you're not supposed to turn it on me, but I would say
must listen to mother. That's the rules of the show.
I have two things, actually. One is finding commonality. And I think, wherever you are, whatever problem you're working on, how do other people see that, and what are the common threads? And I think from that base of commonality, that breeds familiarity, and then you can build to that. What's better? What's different? And so I think throughout my career, I've launched a whole bunch of new products and new companies, and really looking for that, what is it like? Question has been really valuable. And I think the second piece is curiosity, is always being curious. I always have to remind myself, you don't actually know the answer. You got to keep asking, because kind of like that, knowing the customer is what appears on the surface may not be what's really going on. And so I think I try to remind myself about curiosity all the time.
I love it. Michael loves it too. All right. Well, so the polls have closed and the audience has spoken. We should have had a drum roll. But Natalie, I would like to welcome you to join me on your very own episode of Transformation Realness in season 3. Congratulations. Yeah. And Elise, you're muted again, Elise. I'm sorry, babe.
I was saying congrats. It was a beautiful answer and really so important, honestly. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope you needed some validation today, because you got it, Hanny. All right. Well, thank you all. Michael, we can move him back off stage. Unless, Natalie, you wanted to say thank you, of course. I'm like rushing.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Elise. Thank you, Katie.
Likewise.
Thank you
Love
all.
you all. You're all winners in my heart. I actually owe you big time. And as we move to wrapping up, I do just want to say thank you to each of these panelists. There's nothing like for myself more vulnerable than coming out and trying to do something wacky and new, but also making it substantive. And I hope that you in the audience felt this. I certainly did. There was a lot here, and I think I need to start making a 90-minute show, I guess. But if you want to hear more of these meaty conversations, this is literally the purpose of the podcast Transformation Realness. We are in the midst of season 2. You can find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts, and I listen to Spotify. We will be doing more Transformation Realness live with more special guests and with more surprise guests. And I can't wait to see you all on the next one. For today, this is Kyle signing off. Michael, take us away. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.